Chapter 178, Reincarnted 3. Located in Beleno, the outskirts of the Kiel Empire, the village Reincarnted lived in was as rustic as Jidal, Eugene's hometown. When Eugene arrived in the village, he finally understood why Cyan and Seal had said some specific things before. "It smells like cow dung," Eugene commented bitterly. To some level, Cyan and Seal had spoken the truth. The smell of cow and horse dung wafted around the quiet countryside. "Won't it be better to live in a city rather than the countryside?" Eugene muttered to himself. "I hate the city because it's noisy there," Reincarnted mumbled, frowning after she had followed Eugene outside. She looked like she had nothing to do aside from watching what was happening in the Dragonic mansion while cooping herself inside her home, so why would she care if the outside of her house was noisy? However, Eugene decided to not ask Reincarnted the question. "Don't come looking for me on your own," Reincarnted spoke. "This is a quiet village. If a warp gate connecting to the capital was opened here, the news would shock everyone in the town. If one of the Lionhearts used the warp gate, the villagers would be hellbent on holding a festival." "Are you exaggerating a bit?" Eugene asked reluctantly. "This village held a festival for a neighbor's dog when it first succeeded in using a potty. I don't want to provide any excuses for the village to have another festival or attract attention because of you. If she really didn't want to receive attention, shouldn't she have lived in a secluded mountain village instead of a village like this? And how could she hope to not draw unwanted attention with her fiery red hair?" Eugene didn't ask those questions too. "Then what do you want me to do?" Eugene tilted his head. "What do you mean?" "I will just send the magic staff as I don't want to be associated with you any further," Reincarnted spoke, glaring at Eugene. "Stupid Hamel, I'm telling you this now because I was too distracted, but I'm really not pleased about your sudden visit. If you weren't a Lionheart and the stupid Hamel's reincarnation, I would have made you pay for your rudeness with your life." "What does the fact that I'm a Lionheart have to do with anything?" Eugene asked with faint annoyance. "It is true that the world became peaceful after the Great Vermouth swore the oath. I'm a dragon, but I respect the Great Vermouth." Reincarnted nodded solemnly. "But why aren't you respecting me? I also fucking cut the heads of 3 demon kings with Vermouth. I forgave your sudden visit and your rude remarks, so aren't I respecting you enough? I think you need to respect me a lot more. To be frank with you, I will kill Reincarnted, the motherfucker of the dragons, on your and other dragons' behalf and finish the task that the solidly sleeping dragons weren't able to do 300 years ago." "You are going to finish it? How?" Reincarned's eyes sparkled. "Are you seriously asking that? I'm going to kill Reincarnted, the Demon King of Incarceration and the Demon King of Destruction. In the process, I will probably kill all the other high-ranking demon folks and wipe out Hellmouth that braggingly calls itself an empire," Eugene said nonchalantly, but Reincarnted believed none of Eugene's words would come true. However, Eugene's eyes were calm and his voice didn't tremble, so he sounded like he was talking about his daily life, just telling her he was hungry or thirsty. If a person was hungry, they needed to eat and they could just drink if they were thirsty. So yes, everything Eugene said wasn't difficult to complete because all he had to do was just do it. Killing Reincarnted, the Demon King of Incarceration, the Demon King of Destruction, and wiping out Hellmouth could never come true, but Eugene spoke as if he could just do the impossible if he just tried. Therefore Reincarnted was confused. She was a young dragon who had recently graduated from being a hatchling, and she hadn't even been born 300 years ago, the time when the world was in the heat of war. Only after Vermouth had succeeded in ringing out an oath with the Demon King of Incarceration and the world gained peace had she hatched from the egg. She hadn't experienced the war, but she knew how horrible the war was 300 years ago. Dragons lived for eons, and the dragons who had barely survived the fight against the Demon King of Destruction said that the scariest and most horrible being they encountered during their lifespan was the Demon King of Destruction, followed by the Demon King of Incarceration. "You can't fight with the Demon King of Destruction." The dragon had told Vermouth and his party as his last words. The dragon's last words were also the lesson that every dragon learned through extreme pain. Even Reincarnted had heard this from her mother before she had gone dormant. Showing her crushed scales and wounds underneath, her mother warned Reincarnted to never go to Hellmouth, try to take revenge on Reincarnted for the other dragons, or to fight against the Demon King of Incarceration, or stand in front of the Demon King of Destruction. Hamel. Ariartel no longer added stupid in front of his name because she could finally realize that the man in front of her wasn't the 20-year-old Eugene Lionheart. He was the leading star of the war and had journeyed to kill the 3 demon kings alongside the hero Vermouth, who had challenged the demon kings. The same demon kings who had clipped the wings of all the dragons 300 years ago. Ariartel, the Cradle's manager and the only dragon to be awake, would like to ask Hamel Dinah's. Are you really going to kill all the demon kings? Ariartel asked solemnly. Then shall I make pinky swears with the sleeping dragons or something? Eugene snorted as he answered, I prefer punching and swinging a sword to making promises. Is that so? Ariartel didn't need to suggest Eugene take a vow because she read Eugene's hatred and the strong desire to kill, which hadn't subsided or decreased over time in his calm golden eyes. Hamel. No, Eugene Lionheart was going to kill all the demon kings. Even if he failed to achieve the goal due to his lack of strength, he would continue to try everything he could to kill the demon kings until the last day of his life. That cloak. Ariartel observed Eugene's cloak of darkness closely. The cloak was an extraordinary artifact that no longer needed to be improved. The inside of the cloak was carved with the highest-ranking spatial magic, and its outside was filled with appearance-changing spells and defensive spells for physical and magical attacks. It's already a great artifact, but it isn't a good enough armor if I think about the enemies you will face. Ariartel raised her hand, splitting the air, and put her hand in the split space. I'm managing the assets of the dormant dragons, but I assume you won't need jewels or coins since you're a member of the prestigious Lionhearts. Ariartel spoke as she pulled out an ordinary-looking golden ring. I hope this aids your journey. However, Eugene knew that the ring was never an ordinary ring. Unlike its exterior, the inside of the ring was pitch black because it was filled with small indecipherable letters, creating magic formulas. What is that? Eugene asked. It's Agaroth's ring. Do you know who he is? Ariartel looked at Eugene. I don't know. Who is he? He is one of the ancient gods who had disappeared due to the myth that mainly emphasized the god of light. You must have received a high level of education since you were born in the prestigious noble house, Ariartel explained. There was one religion that could be called the biggest religion in this world right now, and it was that of the god of light served by the Holy Empire Eurus. The religion was not only believed in Eurus, but it was also believed all over the continent. The god of light wasn't the only god on the continent. Although Eurus had officially made the god of light religion a state religion, the other nations guaranteed the freedom of religious beliefs, leading to different countries and tribes believing in various gods. For example, the citizens of Nahama believed in the god of desert and sand. The people in Shimuan, who were famous for upholding the code of chivalry, believed in the god of knights and honor. There were also various beliefs in the Kiel Empire, but the most famous god was the god of light, followed by the god of abundance and prosperity. Aside from the gods that people still believed in, it was known that many other deities had existed in ancient times. Agaroth is an ancient god of war from the old era that even dragons who lived for eons don't remember. The ring is the remaining artifact from the Age of Myth. The ring flew toward Eugene from Ariartel's hand. When Eugene reached out with his left hand, the ring put itself on Eugene's ring finger even though his fingers weren't adorned with any accessories. Why did you put it on my ring finger? Eugene tilted his head. From ancient times, the ring on the ring finger has various meanings, from a contract, a bond, a promise, Ariartel calmly spoke. After pricking Eugene's finger, the ring shrunk its size to fit his finger and absorbed his blood. Shortly after, an invisible barrier covered Eugene's body underneath his uniform. Although Eugene was sure something had covered his skin, he could feel nothing. When he brushed his skin, he could still feel his arm and pull out his arm hair. He could even feel a little pain if he pinched his skin. The ring will protect you from lethal dangers, Ariartel continued. It won't protect you perfectly, but it will help a lot in fighting against your enemies. Give me Akasha. Eugene gestured at Ariartel. After Ariartel handed him Akasha, he glared at the ring and could understand the various spells engraved on it one by one. This was ancient magic. No closer to divine magic. It is impossible to decipher them and they don't look like they require mana. Eugene observed the ring. Though he was observing the spells with Akasha's aid, he couldn't replicate them without using the ring itself. This was the case with all divine magic. While it was technically still classified as magic, It was fundamentally different from regular magic that used mana, for which reason the powers of priests and paladins were called miracles. A magic barrier. Is this healing magic? The healing magic forcefully increases the regenerative abilities of the ring owner to the maximum limit. Luckily, it's only activated when I want it to, Eugene thought. He now understood what Agaroth's ring was. At the cost of forcefully recovering the owner's fucked-up body, the ring's healing spell decreased the ring owner's lifespan, stealing the owner's future. Along with figuring out why the ring made a contract with the owner through their ring finger and siphoned their blood, Eugene had also comprehended why Agaroth, the ring's original owner, was a god of war. Agaroth wanted the owner to stand up and fight after recovering their half-dead body multiple times through the ring. Eugene chuckled as he clenched his fists. If he inevitably used the healing spell, he would need plenty of rest and recover his vitality that would be drained away by the ring. Moreover, he wouldn't be able to overuse the ring's regenerative ability in battles. Although it depended on the severity of the wounds, recovering from one fatal injury with the aid of the ring would make it useless for further consecutive uses. Using it with ignition is impossible. I would rather suffer the rebound. Eugene clicked his tongue. The idea of using ignition to the level at which he burst his heart and healing the shattered heart with Agaroth's ring came to his mind. Not only was it a brainlessly crazy method, but it also wouldn't give him the efficiency he thought it would give, so it would just make him idiotically self-destruct. It'll be for the best to just receive treatments for injuries, so I guess it's just insurance for an inevitable moment. It's also lucky that I can choose whether or not to use the ability. I can heal my injuries just enough for my body to survive and recover my lost lifespan after I survive. If he hadn't understood the ring through Akasha, he would have overused it on battlefields and died a sudden death. Snorting at the god of war's naughtiness and atrocity, Eugene clenched his fists as he asked, "Are you not going to give me any weapons? You no longer need any new weapons." Ariartel shook her head. The storm sword WNYD alone was one of the strongest weapons on the continent. Aside from the sword, the Lionhearts possessed various weapons, strong enough to even make dragons madly obsessed. Vermouth had found and monopolized the hidden weapons of the Age of Myth from around the continent 300 years ago. Including the dormant dragon's assets, no stronger weapons existed than the ones the Lionhearts possessed. I want to decide whether or not I need them though. It looks really bothersome to manage the dragon's assets, so why don't you leave that to me? I will put them to good use and return them in one piece, along with some money and jewels. If you go through the full-length mirror in the living room, you will be able to return to the Dragonic estate. Ariartel took Akasha away from Eugene without further ado. I will carve the draconic spell on the magic staff and send it to the Lionheart estate, so don't come to visit me anymore. It looked like she had no intention of entrusting Eugene with the dragon's entire assets. Eugene gained more than he had thought he could from the week he had spent in the Dragonic mansion. First, Alchester had taught Eugene the empty palm. Then Eugene had met Ariartel, the dragon, and learned that all the dragons aside from her had gone dormant. And lastly, he had obtained Agaroth's ring, which would be Eugene's insurance in a worst-case scenario. But his biggest achievement was that he could now track Raizakia using the draconic spell that would be carved on Akasha. Although he still needed Raizakia's personal items that had been used over a long period or the blood of Raizakia's hatchling, he now had options. A significant improvement over the time when Eugene had just wandered around without any clues. I have to go to the Dragon Demon Castle either way. Eugene came to a conclusion. Although it was a very accurate conclusion, he couldn't depart to the castle immediately as he still needed to decide if he was going to barge into the Dragon Demon Castle or sneak inside. No matter his choice, going to the Dragon Demon Castle meant that Eugene was going to Helmuth. On top of that, the Dragon Demon Castle was filled with beings who hated humans the most in all of Helmuth. Aside from finding Raizakia, the draconic spell that would be carved on Akasha would have complicated magic formulas, but they had one simple purpose: tracking. I might be able to find the Moonlight Sword's fragment through the spell. Eugene had too many strong enemies to kill, so if he could restore the Moonlight Sword to its original state from 300 years ago, it would be of tremendous help to Eugene in killing them. And Vermouth. Eugene thought bitterly. Vermouth had hidden the fact that he hadn't died for 200 years and put a hole in Sienna's chest. He also left the Moonlight Sword inside my coffin. After stealing Sienna's necklace to interfere with Eugene's reincarnation, he had left the necklace in the treasure house of the Lionheart family's main branch. Using the spell, Eugene could perhaps track down the unfathomable bastard. Sob. Maybe I can even find Anise or Molan. Anise, became an angel. Then will it lead me to heaven? Eugene wondered. Sob. Sob, sob. It seems Molan is still alive, considering how he was healthy and well 100 years ago. Wait, he didn't die in the meantime, right? Molan's favorite items will be there in the Ruhr Kingdom's castle. Eugene made a plan in his mind. Sob. Why are you weeping? Eugene frowned and looked forward, seeing the crying Leo as he drooped his shoulders. Are you not sad? Leo asked with difficulty. Do you think I'm going to die? Or are you going to die? Sob. Leo just cried. Why in the world are you crying? Why are you so sad about me returning to my own home? Eugene genuinely wondered. I can no longer learn from you. Leo's shoulders trembled. I have taught you everything I can, so you don't need my lessons anymore, Leo Draconic. Eugene firmly said, thinking this would be a better way to calm Leo down than sloppily pacifying him. Although he had been annoyed just now, Eugene solemnly put his hand on Leo's shoulder. Shed sweat instead of tears, boy. The more sweat you shed, the stronger you will be. Don't forget my lessons during the training. I will. Leo fervently nodded. Obey Sir Alchester's words and don't swagger as you just rely on your father's power. If you swagger without knowing anything about reality, you might get killed by a person who is scarier than me. Yeah, I will. I've taught you for a week, but don't mistake yourself and visit the Lionhearts on your own, thinking we have a special bond. Pardon? Leo asked back, unable to understand Eugene. After pondering for a moment, Eugene rephrased his words for a 10-year-old to understand clearly and said, If you want to come, ask me if you can come, but don't come if I say no, got it? Okay. Leo smiled brightly as he imagined visiting the Lionhearts to meet Eugene. Of course, Eugene would say no to Leo no matter what he said. I played with children 7 years ago, so I can't play with a child again at this age. Weren't the current Cyan and Seal children if Eugene added the age from his past life to his current age? Then what about me? Am I old? The thought suddenly popped into Eugene's mind, but he didn't think about it further. It's better to be young than old. Including his past life, Eugene was lenient with only himself in many ways. Chapter 179, Ariardal 4. When Eugene returned to the Lionheart estate, nothing had changed. This was not surprising though, considering that he had only been away for a week. How's Leo Draconic? Gilead interrupted Eugene's report in the Patriarch's office. He's young but he's a genius, Eugene answered. At the same time, Carmen, who was sitting beside Gilead, flicked open the lid of her DuPont lighter. How much longer is she planning to do that? Eugene wondered, avoiding Carmen's gaze. Well, at least he tried to ignore it. Pong. Carmen flicked her lighter lid once more. Holding back the sigh that was stuck in his throat, Eugene turned his head to look at Carmen's lighter as he said, It's a cool lighter. I don't like the word genius being used lightly, Carmen muttered, creating fire with her finger that flicked the lighter lid. PCCZ. When you talk about him being a genius, do you mean the next Draconic Patriarch is as great a genius as you or maybe even better? Carmen asked. Not really. If I just take into account his gifts, Leo is a little bit better than Cyan. Eugene shrugged. That is not good news. Carmen faintly frowned. I'm saying Leo is better than Cyan if I only take into account his talent. Otherwise, Cyan and Leo are totally different people. While Leo, feels that he is doing pretty fine, Cyan is never satisfied with himself, Eugene explained. Although he had been with Leo for just a week, it had been more than enough for Eugene to figure out Leo's personality to some extent. After giving it some serious thought, Eugene had come to a conclusion. Leo Draconic had exceptional innate talent and was passionate about learning and training himself. He was also proud of his Draconic blood and the clan that he had been born into, meaning that he was in a good environment, a very good environment. Leo was the only rightful heir of the Draconics. Within 20 years or so, Leo would become the Draconic Patriarch no matter what. Leo was well aware of everything. Alchester Draconic, his father and the best knight of the Empire, loved him. Just like the Draconic Knights were completely devoted to Alchester, they would swear the same loyalty to him someday. In order to become truly powerful, talent is not nearly enough. What you need is tenacity that allows you to endure any and all effort and hardships. Eugene continued his explanation. In an environment like Leo's, it was hard for a person to acquire that tenacity, but what about Cyan? Although he was currently the heir of the prestigious Lionheart clan, he hadn't been designated as the heir from the start, because neither was Ancilla the first wife, nor he the patriarch's first son. Ever since he was a child, Cyan had to continuously prove himself. Even though he was raised in such a tough environment, and had my shadow continuously looming over him, didn't he brave through anyway? Cyan has become a fine adult. Eugene faintly smiled. Not as good as you. Carmen shrugged. Well, I'm still not going to become the patriarch. Anyhow, Cyan's upbringing was much tougher than whatever Leo experienced, and he is by far more tenacious. You are well aware of it, aren't you? Eugene said, making Carmen grin. If they chose the next patriarch solely based on individual power, then that individual would undoubtedly be Eugene, and Cyan was also well aware of it. However, Cyan hadn't given up. Since he knew that he wasn't the perfect heir, then he simply had to become perfect. Considering that he was going to become the next patriarch if no incident occurred, he could afford to loosen up a little, yet he still devoted himself to training every single day. This earned him the respect and support of the Lionheart clan members. People usually cheered much more for someone who wasn't perfect but did their best and never gave up rather than for someone who was just perfect from the get-go. To put it simply, Leo can't beat Cyan. Eugene summed up concisely. Carmen was very much into friendship, faith, and the springtime of youth. Feeling goosebumps at Eugene's inspiring speech, she nodded. It's a beautiful conclusion. Staring at the flame in her hands for a moment, Carmen then snapped shut the lighter lid. Gilead also looked rather pleased. When Gilead had adopted Eugene and brought him to the main estate 7 years ago, Gilead had some worries, but those worries no longer existed. In fact, they had been replaced by a feeling of his own inadequacy, especially due to having witnessed Eugene's swordsmanship in the previous competition. During the competition, Eugene's swordsmanship set fire to the hearts of all the Lionhearts. Shall we stroll together? Carmen randomly asked after she and Eugene had exited Gilead's office. The reason was obvious. Looking at the mumbling Carmen, Eugene chuckled. It seemed like although she wanted to question him, she wasn't able to speak properly, so she just opened and closed her mouth several times, looking really frustrated. Why did you hit the mirror? Eugene just directly asked Carmen the question he really wanted to ask, and she knew what Eugene meant. When other people were forced to recall an embarrassing memory from the distant past, they would pretend that they didn't know anything or make excuses with a flushed face, but that was not the case with Carmen. Of course, Carmen wasn't embarrassed about her past one bit, so she proudly answered, I wanted to shatter myself. Pardon? Eugene was more confused by her answer. The egg is the world. 1. What was she trying to say? Whoever wants to be born must first destroy a world, Carmen solemnly spoke. It's a mirror, not an egg, Eugene quietly mumbled, feeling a headache coming. My reflection in the mirror is myself in the mirror of another, opposite reality, so don't you find that the wall between us is like the shell of an egg? So what would then happen if I reached out toward my mirror self? Carmen held up her fist. When I touched the mirror, my fist touched another reality, shattering it. I hope to be reborn. Yeah. Eugene half-heartedly nodded. And I was actually reborn because the coincidental encounter led me to another world. Eugene, you know that story, because you met, right? Carmen's face brightened up. I can't tell you. Eugene pretended that he had made a vow, although unlike Carmen he hadn't made a promise in Draconic to keep the meeting with Ariartel secret. He felt like he would end up losing his mind if he talked with Carmen about this. I guess there's no other choice then. Carmen nodded. Although she wanted to talk in detail about the mysterious experience, Carmen understood that it was impossible to break the vow, since she was also under a vow. Looking disappointed, Carmen retreated, so Eugene silently heaved a sigh of relief. Hey! After checking Carmen had gone away far enough, Eugene glared downward. Are you happy? He snorted when he heard a gasp from downstairs. Cyan quickly ran up to Eugene. What do you mean I'm happy? Why are you playing dumb when you ran your ass off to get here? Eugene tilted his head. No, well. I was just a bit surprised, Cyan mumbled. You've been sneaky ever since you were a child. It makes you look like a wuss man, Eugene commented. You are too harsh on your brother. Cyan trailed off. If you've eavesdropped on a compliment, you should also gladly take the criticism. So are you happy? Eugene asked again. Unable to say anything, Cyan cleared his throat because of course he felt good. Who would hate it if they eavesdropped on other people complimenting them? I'm just saying this so you wouldn't misunderstand. I didn't eavesdrop. I could just hear it since, as you know, Father's office is right above my room, Cyan quickly explained. Wasn't the patriarch's office soundproofed? Well, the builders finished the estate expansion in such a hurry. Cyan turned his head sideways. Then I've to tell Lady Ancilla that the fucking builders did a shit job on the expansion even though they were paid a lot. Eugene spoke coldly, causing Cyan's eyes to widen. Wait, there's no need to tell Mother. I could hear Father's voice in yours, that's all. My ears just work better than usual. Cyan's voice was barely audible now. Instead of saying something, Eugene just squinted at Cyan. The latter could almost physically feel the sting of Eugene's gaze. After tapping on the floor with his toes several times, Cyan heaved a big sigh as he confessed, well, you know, sometimes people get curious, and they listen to things. Sneaky bastard. Eugene grinned. Not like I eavesdropped on anything confidential or bad. Hey, what's your next plan? Cyan's face brightened up. The same things I always do. Eugene shrugged. I knew it. Then why don't you check my swordsmanship since we haven't done it in a while? Cyan tapped the hilt of his sword as he conveniently changed the topic. It seemed that he was eager to train more after hearing the compliments from upstairs. Sure. Eugene had no reason to refuse. Although the estate's training area had been expanded significantly, too many knights were training there. Receiving the knights' greetings, Eugene and Cyan left the estate and headed to the forest. Is it because elves live here? I feel like my mana training always goes smoothly in the forest. Cyan brightly spoke. Idiot, you could always train better in the forest anyway, so what do the elves living here have to do with anything? Eugene tilted his head. Well, it is said that the elven race originates from a fairy living in the forest, so the presence of the elves makes the forest more special. Just in case, I'm warning you not to force the elves to cater to your weird preferences, got it? Who the hell do you think I am? Cyan turned away in shock. Eugene recalled the adult books that Cyan had indulged in ever since he was little and the women wearing suggestive clothing on the covers. If you dare so much as suggest that. Eugene blatantly stared at Cyan's crotch, and his gaze was so cold that Cyan shivered. Crossing his legs, Cyan frowned. This is so unfair. The training area in the forest was much quieter than the one in the estate, but there were still some people training in there. Eugene looked at the training area where he could see Desra, who was busting her ass trying to control the sleek-looking wyvern. Judging from her plaintively shaking hands on the reins, she was practicing her wyvern riding skill. In front of Desra, Seal was looking at her with a resigned gaze. Although Seal was also riding a wyvern, she was comfortably sitting on top of the wyvern, and her arms were crossed. Her mount was obedient even though she wasn't holding the reins. You are doing it wrong. A wyvern is totally different from a horse. These guys don't run, they fly, Seal explained. I don't know what it's like to fly because I don't have wings. Desra pouted. So I am Aini. See, your sitting position is also wrong. The wyvern can't move his wings if you sit there. Move a little bit forward. It's important to become one with the wyvern. Become one, Desra. You're uselessly big but should stick to the wyvern's scales. Seal shouted. Am I but isn't big? Desra talked back. That's your problem now. Focus on the important part. Become one. Are you seriously capable of nothing? Lean closer to the wyvern and stop pulling the reins. Hold it as if it's a part of you. Seal poured out nagging sentence after sentence without stopping once. The more Seal continued, the more Desra's shoulders trembled, but Seal didn't stop. Don't try to make yourself comfortable. Think about the wyvern that is squashed under your big butt right now. And also think of me, who gave up her only day off on this sunny day to teach you. And also think of Draggy, who keeps folding and closing his wings to show you how it's done. Sob. Sob. Desra's eyes filled up with tears. Don't cry. What are you going to do if you cry? Nothing can be solved by crying. You are doing it again. You are not leaning onto the wyvern enough again. No matter what you hear, maintain your position. Even if you get stabbed and your guts pour out during your flight, don't let go of the reins. Seal shouted at the top of her lungs. Just hearing Seal's nagging was enough to make Cyan shudder. Phew. Cyan sympathetically looked at Desra's drooping shoulders. During the bloodline continuation ceremony and the hunt in the Black Lion Castle's forest, she hadn't hesitated to talk back to everyone, but she now acted like a whining puppy with its tail between its legs in front of Seal. Sister, why don't you cut? Cyan stepped up. Be quiet, Cyan. I'm not wrong. She must learn the correct way now, otherwise she will only be a nuisance to the other knights in our division, Seal growled. Although she knew that Cyan and Eugene were watching, who cared? As Desra's superior, Seal had to grasp her subordinate with a firm hand in order to teach her properly. If a cavalryman made a mistake during a battle, they would just fall off their horse and end up with bruises, but a wyvern rider making a mistake during an air battle would quite literally result in the rider plummeting down from the sky. If so, not only could Desra die, but she would also cause harm to the other knights because their formation would break. She's right. Eugene shrugged. Well, she can be more gentle, Cyan timidly suggested. I know this from my lessons with you. If the situation demands it, it's better to scold the student than comfort them, Eugene said. What did I do now? Cyan pouted as he felt the heat on him. Since Eugene was taking her side, Seal brightly smiled. Watch me, Desra. I'll show you how to make a wyvern walk. Okay, Desra answered, sobbing. Stop crying. Pay attention. My draggy is known to walk most elegantly and stylishly among all the Black Lion Knights' wyverns. Seal raised her chin, looking proud as she pulled the reins little by little. She spurred Draggy toward Eugene as if she were leading a parade, but after walking a few steps forward, Draggy refused to move due to his vivid memory of Eugene beating him up and pulling out his scales. Instead of approaching Eugene, Draggy groaned and shook his head. Draggy! Seal's eyes shone with surprise. She couldn't believe Draggy was embarrassing her before her subordinate. Desra. It's all your fault. Pardon? Desra flinched. Because you've been acting stupid until now. Draggy had to repeat his demonstration several times, making him too tired to move. Seal shouted. Desra spoke quietly. Am I wrong? So you haven't been acting stupid? Then prove it. Fly. Seal urged. I see can't, Desra stuttered. Stupid Desra, Seal snapped. She dismounted Draggy, then she approached Eugene. How was the Dragonic Esta? Seal froze up in the middle of her question, her gentle smile instantly wiped off her face. Why did you stop? Eugene asked. She couldn't just say that she had seen the ring on his ring finger. Right? What is it? Eugene asked again. Seal's expression kept changing. Her eyebrows raised and dropped, she looked pensive and then she frowned. She looked as if she was going to say something, but she stopped herself. She shivered for a moment, then her gaze turned ice cold. It was Cyan's first time seeing his sister acting like this, but the instinct engraved in his very blood and flesh let him know that he ought to be afraid, very afraid. When he was a child, he had once feared ghosts. However, he now realized how insignificant ghosts were. The real terror was standing right before him. Right now, not only was his sister scarier than a ghost, but unlike ghosts, she was actually real in front of his eyes. Ugh. Desra groaned in fear as she saw Seal's triceps and deltoid wriggling from behind. She's going to slap him, Desra thought as she held her breath. Seal was indeed actively thinking about slapping Eugene with her full power, and wondering whether or not she should go ahead and put her thoughts into practice. What? Eugene subconsciously stuttered, something that almost never happened to him. That was how sudden and intense the energy Seal released was. In the meanwhile, Seal recalled the Dragonic family tree. The Dragonic patriarch was Alchester Dragonic and he had one wife. They only had a 10-year-old son, Leo Dragonic. Therefore, Eugene clearly hadn't gotten engaged with a Dragonic family member all of a sudden, but romance between a man and a woman could spark rather abruptly. Since the Dragonic clan was very prestigious, there had to be many young maids in the estate. So was Eugene the noble young master in love with a maid? Although she knew that this kind of romance novels were always hits, she couldn't believe that Eugene, who only focused on swinging swords, training until he sweated and eating meat, would hook up with a maid who wasn't even a Lionheart. In that case, had Eugene fallen in love with one of the Dragonic knights? Which of the Dragonic knights was female? Hey! Seal forced herself to calm down. Her face-slapping muscles stopped twitching to Desra's relief, But even though she tried to suppress her emotions, her body still tensed up against her will. With a trembling grin she continued, "What's with that ring?" She could guess at it all day but she couldn't come up with an answer. Therefore she decided to just ask. Chapter 180. Ariartal 5. When Seal asked about the ring, Eugene opened his eyes wide, wondering what she meant about a ring. Wait, a ring? Eugene realized. Ah. Eugene held up his left hand and stared at Agarotha's ring on his ring finger. Although he was wearing a ring, he didn't really feel it, and it didn't hinder Eugene from clenching, unclenching, or moving his hand. Looking back and forth between the ring and Seal, Eugene explained, "It's a gift." From who? Seal asked quickly. It was a difficult question to answer since the ring was from Ariartal, the dragon. He hadn't made any vow using Draconic to not talk anything about her to someone else. But Eugene had no intention to speak about Ariartal unless he really needed to. "I can't tell you," Eugene answered with an awkward smile. Regretting telling Seal that the ring was a gift, Eugene saw Seal's eyes lose focus. It wasn't just her eyes because Seal tightly clenched her fists and bit her previously gaped lips. "You can't tell me." "Why?" Seal hadn't been planning on getting enraged about this matter. Her plan was to handle the situation rationally and calmly, but a person's mind and emotions often contradicted the person's rationality. On top of that, a person often failed to objectively analyze their emotions. For instance, the person obviously looked angry, but they refused to acknowledge that they were angry. It wasn't that they lacked the ability to make such a judgment, but they pretended to do so even while knowing their true feelings, or they didn't want to admit their emotions because they were embarrassed. It also applied to Seal because she thought she wasn't furious and had no reason to be angry. A ring? So what? Even though she believed it was nothing, the thought didn't naturally come to her mind as it was just a desperate self-justification. Seal Lionheart was a 20-year-old human who teased and made others angry rather than getting teased and angry herself. Therefore she didn't want to admit this complicated but simple annoyance she was feeling right now. Meanwhile, she shook her fists and chewed her lips, blatantly expressing her irritation to Eugene. Are you all right?" Eugene cautiously asked, feeling a shiver down his spine. Taking a step back, Eugene lowered his left hand, but just then Seal snatched Eugene's wrist. Seal raised one of her eyebrows, glaring at the ordinary-looking gold ring. The ring didn't really have an expensive jewel. No, was it actually made of gold? Maybe the ring had been plated with gold or made from another mineral. When she reached such a conclusion, the ring's color on Eugene's ring finger looked faded. "It doesn't look expensive," Seal commented. "I'm not sure about its price." Eugene looked at his ring. "It doesn't look good for the members of the Lionheart main family to wear a cheap." Seal trailed off after seeing the old necklace on Eugene's neck through the gap in his shirt. If her memory served her correctly, Eugene had already been wearing that necklace for 7 years. Although Gilead knew that the necklace was from the Lionheart treasure house, Seal and Cyan didn't know about that for a simple reason. 7 years ago Eugene had brought out 2 things, the necklace and W.E. from the Lionheart treasure house, and Gilead didn't want his children to be jealous and give the cold shoulder to Eugene. Therefore Seal and Cyan had previously come up with a theory. Since Eugene never took off the necklace, even when he was sleeping, maybe the necklace was from Eugene's deceased mother. "I'm so stupid," Seal screamed in her mind. The necklace was so old that it couldn't be called luxury even as a pleasantry, but that necklace was probably from Eugene's deceased mother, making it the most valuable treasure for Eugene. Seal had completely forgotten about the necklace and made a comment about how Eugene was wearing a cheap accessory. Not knowing what to do, Seal tiptoed around Eugene. In fact, it was from Hamel's deceased parents, but it didn't mean much now. Eugene was wearing it since the necklace was from his past life. Cyan spoke as he stepped up. Since Seal was in trouble, he thought he had to help his sister. However, how should he help her? Well, he did make Eugene and Seal look at him by speaking up. Cyan saw how Seal's eyes lost focus. His sister, who had been born a few seconds later than him, always looked mischievous and naughty, but she was feeling lost. "You are thrifty, huh?" Cyan said as he chuckled. Although he had put some words together, he felt there must be better words to choose from. Looking back and forth between Seal and Eugene, Cyan continued, "The ring, must have special characteristics that ordinary people don't know since you are wearing it." Seal's eyes started to focus again little by little and she awkwardly snorted in a high pitch. However, Seal was certain that she perfectly controlled her emotions and successfully hid how she had been shaken up. "So you can't tell us who gave you that ring?" Seal quietly asked. "Shouldn't you respect others' privacy?" Eugene answered. Upon hearing the worst answer, Seal raised her eyebrows, making Cyan break into a cold sweat. Durza never wanted to be involved in the conversation, so she kept her butt close to the saddle as she maintained her unstable position on top of the wyvern's back. Despite feeling frustrated from the conversation, Mare ate crispy chips inside Eugene's cloak. "The ring," Cyan hurriedly interrupted. "Wearing the ring on your left ring finger has a special meaning, right? That is why the story about your ring is your private affair, and you can't tell us, am I correct?" "What? Why is everyone so interested in my ring?" Eugene raised one of his eyebrows. Of course I'm curious since you are my brother. Just a week ago you didn't wear any ring, so wouldn't it be natural for us to be curious if you're suddenly wearing a ring on your ring finger? Of course sharing rings with somebody else is totally your right," Cyan spoke dramatically. "No, you are misunderstanding. This isn't a matching ring." Eugene lightly chuckled, waving his hand. "This is a magic artifact, not a fashion accessory. The reason I can't tell you about who gave me magic." Cyan suddenly yelled and went up to Seal, putting his arm around her shoulder. "That was it. You have no other choice if it's a magic artifact. Magic is really a mysterious and secret study, right?" "What?" Eugene asked back in disbelief. "People shouldn't talk hastily about magic, so you have no choice. Considering your personality, you must have a good reason to not talk about it," Cyan proudly concluded, grinning awkwardly. "You are right, Sir Cyan." Mare stuck her head out from the cloak. Then, wiping the chip crumbs from her mouth, Mare continued, "The ring holds a magical vow. Since you aren't a wizard, you may not be aware of this, but the left ring finger symbolizes a contract, a promise, and a connection. And such a ritual is very important in magic." "Is that so?" Seal's face loosened up more. "Yes, that's true. And just like Sir Cyan mentioned, magic should be secretive. That's why Sir Eugene can't tell you. Yup." Mare backed Cyan up. Although Mare wanted the conversation to continue further, it seemed that things would escalate into a disaster if she let the conversation continue on its current track, and that wasn't what Mare wished. To be honest, watching Seal's refreshing reaction from within Eugene's cloak was quite fun. Well, her every attempt will be futile once Lady Sienna returns, Mare thought, already feeling a sense of superiority like a victor. "Is they it, Sue?" Seal grinned, shaking Eugene's hand up and down that she had been holding until now. "I can't believe I got so worked up," Seal thought in disbelief. After calming down very quickly, Seal spoke pleasantly, "There's no choice if magic is involved. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" She knew she had gotten enraged about a stupid matter just because it involved Eugene. Her pervert brother had indulged himself in pornographic books he had hidden in his room since he was little, but Eugene hadn't done it once, not to Seal's knowledge. Eugene was stoic and devoted himself to training and improving himself to the extent that Seal couldn't believe Cyan and Eugene were the same age. Did he run into a wandering wizard that had been hiding their identity or something? Seal wondered. The Dragonics had Alchester Dragonic, the best knight in the Empire, as their patriarch. Although the Dragonics were lacking in several aspects compared to the Lionhearts, there was a possibility of the Dragonics having a secluded wizard with a hidden identity as their clan member. "I did it!" Desra exclaimed from behind. The wyvern that had refused to move in accordance with Desra's will now followed her lead and flapped its wings. "Lady Seal, look! My wyvern spread his wings!" Dara proudly called out to Seal. "Shut up, Desra." Seal let go of Eugene's hand and glared at Desra for talking to her when she was having a good conversation. Another week had passed. After Eugene got up from his bed, he blinked in disbelief because Akasha was floating in the middle of his room. Ariartel had said that she would send Akasha to Eugene, and she literally just sent it over to him. From the rustic Bolaño, Akasha had flown all the way to Eugene's room in the Lionheart's main estate. Well, did she not worry about someone snatching it or birds pooping on it? Eugene frowned. Of course, Ariartel had cast all sorts of protections on Akasha for possible accidents, from an invisible spell to a magic barrier to shield the staff from rainstorms and dust. Still, Eugene grumbled as he reached out to Akasha. Akasha looked the same. However, when he grabbed the staff, Eugene's view flickered once. She improved Akasha's mana circulation system, Eugene analyzed. 300 years ago was a long time back. Although Akasha was made by a dragon, it had an old-fashioned side from the perspective of a wizard from the current generation. Reincarnted, being a newer generation dragon, had figured that out and updated the circulation system to the current standard. Well, there was no standardized system of the circle magic formula when Akasha was made. Eugene nodded. This had always resulted in a little bit of delay and a bit of Eugene's mana getting wasted while using the circle magic formula with Akasha. So the dragon learned Lady Sienna's circle magic formula, right? Mare asked, sticking her head out from within the cloak that Eugene had put aside. During their stay in the Dragonic estate, Reincarnted had poured out intense dragon fear, and Mare had been close by. Although it had been a week since they returned from the Dragonic estate, Mare crawled into the cloak every night, unable to forget the fear she had felt then. She improved the circulation system in accordance with the circle magic formula, so yeah, she probably did so, Eugene agreed. That means Lady Sienna's circle magic formula is so exceptional that even a dragon acknowledges it, right? Mare squealed in excitement. Why are you suddenly bringing it up? Aside from dragons, most wizards are already learning the circle magic formula. Eugene tilted his head in confusion. A human learning about the circle magic formula is totally different from a dragon learning about it. A dragon. No, the race of magic is acknowledging Lady Sienna's ability. That's my Lady Sienna. Mare crawled out of the cloak making a fuss. Then she quickly climbed her way up to Eugene's bed. Despite her excited looks, thinking of a dragon alone made her remember how scared she had been when she had faced Reincarned's dragon fear in close proximity. Feeling Mare's slight trembling, Eugene wrapped a blanket around her without saying anything. Eugene concentrated on linking with Akasha. He could understand what had changed and been added right away. The recoil I experienced while using high-ranking magic has lessened. The formation of formulas became neater and faster. Eugene went through the change one by one. He was currently a 5th circle wizard who could use up to 7th circle magic with Mare and Akasha's assistance. But in all fairness, it was risky for him to use high-ranking spells during battles. Through the improved circulation system, high-ranking spells became less burdensome, and Eugene could use his mana more efficiently while using Akasha. Eugene didn't expect Reincarnted to be generous enough to actually upgrade the staff, so he grinned as he looked at the dragon heart on top of Akasha. He could see the draconic spell engraved by Reincarnted. It didn't include any specific formulas. Rather, the method to use the engraved draconic spell was transmitted directly to Eugene's head through Akasha. After understanding the method, Eugene stood up. After looking around at the surroundings, Eugene remembered his necklace, so he took it off and made it resonate with Akasha. Whoosh. The moment the light inside the dragon heart flickered, Eugene could see an image of someone in his head. That's me. Eugene realized. It was a vague image of him from his past life, but the image soon overlapped with his current self. Was Akasha showing the memory that was engraved in his soul? Or was this? When Eugene infused more of his mana, he could see the Lionheart estate. The coordinates are. I can't read the coordinates, and it seems Akasha can't show me the exact location of the target. Yeah, Reincarnted told me that a location and the coordinates are useless if I go beyond space and reach a dimension. I need to find a concrete connection. Eugene thought as he closed his eyes and understood the concept within the draconic spell. He now had to find something connected with Raizakia and make it resonate with Akasha. If the object was undoubtedly connected to Raizakia, Eugene could force open a dimensional door and reach the rift where Raizakia was wandering around. The spatial coordinates aren't fixed, so it always changes little by little, requiring a complicated calculation, Eugene thought. After giving up on calculating the coordinates, Eugene expanded his search radius to a dimensional level. Looking at a place where the target belonged from far away was enough, so Eugene grinned as he reached his hand to the cloak of darkness, planning to conduct several tests. The first weapon Eugene pulled out was WYD. When he put Akasha before WYD, the sword shook instantly, making Tempest react immediately. It's an unpleasant spell, Tempest grumbled. Cooperate, Eugene spoke concisely. Hamel, I can't refuse if you ask, but keep this in mind. For a long time, countless beings located the spirit world and attempted to enter, including several dragons. However, no one is allowed to enter the spirit world. Why don't you just say I'll die if I go to the spirit world just because I found it? Eugene grumbled, making Akasha resonate with WMOD. The current attempt made Eugene's head ache. Unlike the previous attempt, he couldn't see Tempest and the space he belonged to. So you can't force open the spirit world's door? I guess the spell just enables you to open the door to a place inside that dimension. Well, there is no way such a young dragon can ignore the strict law of the spirit world and open up a door to another dimension. Tempest's voice brightened up a bit. Then the spell will be useless if Raizakia is in another dimension, Eugene said in annoyance. Hamel, don't you already know the answer to your question? If Raizakia were somewhere in another dimension, Sienna Meridian and the elves wouldn't be affected by his curse anymore. Tempest reminded Eugene. Knowing Tempest was right, Eugene felt slightly disappointed as he put down WMOD and pulled out the moonlight sword. Isn't it dangerous? Tempest asked because he also knew the power of the moonlight sword very well, the mysterious sword that had been found in Helmuth's underground ruins. Although Tempest was the wind spirit king who had existed since ancient times, he had never heard of a myth or a legend about the moonlight sword on the continent. Hamel, you may also be aware, but that thing is destruction in the form of a sword. You might experience an unexpected rebound from the sword. The moonlight sword has the strongest connection with Vermouth. Eugene spoke, unsheathing the moonlight sword without a single hesitation. Whoosh! When pale and dim moonlight made up a blade of the moonlight sword, Mare snuggled into the blanket. Thunderbolt Pernoa, Dragon Spear, Holy Sword. All the weapons had their own histories and previous owners before Vermouth began to use them, but the moonlight sword had no history of being used before Vermouth. Although I'm the one who's holding the moonlight sword right now, Vermouth used it way more often, longer and better than me, Eugene reasoned. That's true, but I'm not putting too much hope on this since it's Vermouth. That thorough bastard even had a funeral to pretend that he died, so he must have erased all the traces that could lead to him. However, there is always that what if, right? Even if I fail in finding Vermouth, I might be able to locate the moonlight sword's fragments, Eugene said, bringing Akasha close to the moonlight sword. The moment the moonlight sword's moonlight pushed away Aka's magic, Eugene instantly mediated between the two. When he had first found the moonlight sword's fragment 3 years ago, he had trained his mana control skill using the fragment, and after that he had obtained the sword's handle in the desert grave. It was hard to control the fragment of the moonlight sword, but he could use the sword's handle. The process of making it possible had been so freaking hard. While holding the moonlight sword, he used magic and released his sword force to tame the moonlight sword. Through Eugene's mediation, the draconic spell from Akasha was cast on the moonlight sword. This is, Eugene thought. Something had appeared inside his head. What am I? Eugene slightly gaped. Something appeared, spread and stained his mind. What am I seeing? It was now pitch black. Was it the sky? That's... Eugene squinted. However, he had no idea what he was looking at right now. It was so dark. Nothing was around. No, he couldn't see anything. Vermouth. Rattle. He had heard the sound before. Where had he heard it? Rattle. The sound of iron chains being dragged on the floor echoed in the wavering darkness. 2 rays of red light showed up in the center. Don't look, someone quietly whispered to him. The demon king of incarceration. Eugene realized who had whispered to him. The darkness took on a shade of scarlet, and Eugene knew what that scarlet light was. Hamel. Tempest yelled inside Eugene's head. Sir Eugene. Mare shouted right next to Eugene. The 2 voices brought Eugene back to reality, but his view was still red. Fuck, Eugene cursed as he wiped the blood tears running down his cheeks.